You're holding that combat knife like it's Excalibur, aren't you? Watched enough survival videos to know that a 7-inch tactical blade with a serrated spine is the ultimate zombie apocalypse sidearm. That confidence you're feeling right now, that certainty that you've made the smart choice, that's mistake number one. Here's what most people don't realize about combat knives in actual extended survival scenarios. They're specialized tools being asked to do generalist work, and they fail at almost everything except looking badass on your belt. A study of historical survival situations shows that cutting tools account for less than 8% of actual survival actions in extended scenarios. The other 92%? Problem-solving, shelter-building, fire maintenance, water procurement, and avoiding conflict entirely. Your fancy combat knife is optimized for the 8%. The gear I'm about to show you dominates the 92% and still handles the violent 8% better than you think. If that sounds like I'm about to ruin your tactical fantasy, good. Subscribe and hit the bell, because we're in the business of replacing fantasy with function. Let's get to work. Here's the thing about zombies that changes everything. They don't care about your knife's Rockwell hardness rating. You're not in a knife fight with a trained opponent who respects pain and damage. You're dealing with a mobile meat puppet that doesn't stop until critical structural damage occurs. That 7-inch blade you're so proud of, it needs to penetrate at least 4 inches into specific targets through bone and tissue that's become mechanically resistant. You're going to tire before they do. Let's set the parameters, so we're not arguing in the comments about zombie variants. We're talking about Romero-style slow to medium movers with standard human durability, but no pain response and no fatigue. Headshots put them down permanently. Massive structural damage slows them considerably. You're not superhuman. Your average fitness may be slightly better if you've been taking this seriously. And here's the critical part. You're not in hour 1 of the outbreak. You're in week 3 after the initial panic, after supplies ran short, when every action has to serve multiple purposes because specialization is a luxury you can't afford. Your combat knife is a specialist, the camping gear that outperforms it. That's generalist equipment that happens to excel at violence when necessary. Let's break down why your knife is already failing you and what you should have grabbed instead. Number 1, the camp hatchet. Not a tactical tomahawk with a spike and a rope haul and a breacher blade, just a simple camp hatchet with a 2.5-pound head and a 15-inch handle. You're thinking that's heavier, slower, less maneuverable. You're absolutely right. You're also alive because of those exact qualities. Here's what most people don't realize about striking tools versus stabbing tools in actual combat. You need roughly 60% less precision with a hatchet to achieve stopping damage. That blade doesn't need to find the eye socket or the temple. It just needs to connect with the skull. Your knife demands precision when your hands are shaking and your vision is tunneling, and you've got exactly 1 attempt before those teeth are on you. The hatchet offers forgiveness. Miss the perfect spot by 3 inches, still probably lethal or immediately disabling. Miss with a knife thrust by 3 inches. You just stabbed shoulder muscle and bought yourself 1 second before you're in a grapple you will lose. But here's where it gets worse for the knife and better for the hatchet. Long-term utility value. You need to process firewood in November when temperatures drop and hypothermia becomes a bigger threat than the undead. You need to drive stakes for shelter. You need to breach doors and windows quietly for scavenging. You need to butcher game if you're lucky enough to trap something. Your combat knife can attempt these tasks. The hatchet completes them efficiently and remains functional. That blade geometry optimized for combat penetration, it's wrong for processing wood, wrong for chopping tasks, wrong for anything except the specific violence it was designed for. And let's be real for a minute about maintenance and durability. You're not in a climate-controlled environment with a sharpening stone and gun oil. You're in the field where your knife is cutting paracord, prying open cans being used as a screwdriver, because that's the tool you have. Every impact, every torque, every use outside its design parameters is degrading that edge. A hatchet head? That's a chunk of steel thick enough to forgive abuse. You can restore a hatchet edge with a rock if necessary. You restore a combat knife edge with precision tools and time you don't have. Number 2, the folding saw. You're laughing right now, I can feel it. A saw against zombies. You're thinking this is where I've lost the plot. Here's what separates people who survive from people who thought they were survivors. understanding that 95% of your apocalypse isn't combat. It's problem-solving under resource constraints while maintaining the capacity for violence when violence finds you. That folding saw weighs 6 ounces. It processes firewood faster than your hatchet, with less energy expenditure and zero noise. You can cut through a 2-inch branch in under a minute, with the physical exertion equivalent of walking upstairs. Try that with your combat knife. You'll spend 5 minutes, generate heat and noise, dull your blade, and hate yourself the entire time. The saw is designed for this. It excels at this. And when you're done, you fold it into a pocket-sized package and move on. But you're still thinking about zombies, so let's address the elephant. Can you actually defend yourself with a saw? Short answer, better than you'd expect. Long answer, you're asking the wrong question. The saw doesn't replace your capacity for violence. It replaces your need for violence in 90 situations out of 100 by solving the problems that would force you into conflict in the first place. You need to barricade a window. Knife takes 20 minutes and produces a shaky result. Saw takes 4 minutes and gives you a solid brace. You need to access a roof for elevated security. Knife struggles with constructing a ladder. Saw builds one efficiently. You need to escape a blocked stairwell. Knife chips and dulls prying at wood. Saw removes the obstacle. Every minute you save, every ounce of energy you conserve, every bit of noise you don't generate, that's survival capital accumulating in your favor. And here's the thing about a saw as a weapon that nobody tells you. It's psychologically devastating in close quarters. The sound alone, that aggressive back-and-forth rasp, triggers primal responses. A zombie doesn't care. A living human threatening you? They absolutely care. You're not going to duel with it, but you also don't need to. The mere presence of a tool that clearly causes massive damage to organic material creates hesitation. Hesitation creates opportunity. Opportunity creates escape routes. Number 3. And this is where I lose the tactical crowd entirely. A quality multi-tool with pliers, not one of those Swiss Army knife derivatives with tweezers and a magnifying glass. You're thinking I've completely abandoned combat effectiveness. You're wrong. I've abandoned the fantasy that your apocalypse is 8 hours of continuous knife fights. Your apocalypse is 3 weeks of fixing broken equipment, processing food, maintaining shelter, and avoiding the need for violence through intelligent problem-solving. That multi-tool is a mechanical advantage multiplier. You need to repair the fence around your safe house. You need to extract a rusted nail without tetanus exposure. You need to tighten the bolts on a scavenged bicycle that represents your mobility. You need to strip wire for a perimeter alarm system. Your combat knife offers you a blade and a point. The multi-tool offers you 16 solutions to problems that would otherwise require returning to civilization for equipment you can't acquire anymore. Here's what most people don't realize about long-term survival. Mechanical failures kill you slower than zombies, but with absolute certainty. Your water filter clogs and you can't repair it. You die of dysentery in week 5. Your shelter develops a leak you can't patch. You die of exposure in week 8. Your only weapon breaks and you can't fix it. You die whenever the next threat appears. The multi-tool is insurance against the 1,000 small failures that compound into lethal situations. And let's address the elephant one more time. Can you actually hurt something with a multi-tool? You're not going to like this answer. You already know you can. You've seen what pliers do to flesh when they grip and twist. You understand leverage and mechanical advantage instinctively. A multi-tool in a desperate situation becomes exactly as violent as the person wielding it needs it to be, and then immediately transforms back into a problem-solving device when the moment passes. Your combat knife is permanently committed to violence. It signals violence. It invites violence from living humans who see a weapon and respond accordingly. The multi-tool signals capability and preparedness without triggering defensive reactions. That's social engineering you didn't know you needed until you're trying to trade with other survivors who are deciding whether you're a threat or a resource. Number 4. A headlamp. Not a flashlight, not a tactical torch with a strike bezel, a hands-free LED headlamp with a red light mode and a 100-hour battery life. You're thinking, I've officially lost it. A light source beats a combat knife? Let me ask you something. How many zombie movies feature deaths that happen because someone couldn't see the threat until it was too late? How many survivors die in the dark because they were using one hand for a flashlight and couldn't defend themselves effectively? Here's the brutal truth about post-apocalyptic survival. Darkness is a more consistent threat than zombies. You trip over debris and break an ankle. You fail to see a structural weakness and fall through a floor. You miss a navigation marker and get lost. You don't notice contaminated water and drink it. Every single one of those situations is preventable with adequate hands-free lighting. Every single one of them is potentially lethal without it. Your combat knife doesn't care if you can see. It works identically in light and darkness, which means it works poorly in both contexts when you're stumbling blind. The headlamp transforms every scenario into one where you maintain awareness, preserve both hands for balance and defense, and make informed decisions instead of panicked reactions. But here's where it gets worse for the knife crowd. Light is a weapon system you haven't considered. You're in a dark building. A zombie is shambling somewhere in the structure. You can hear it but can't locate it. You click your headlamp to strobe mode and sweep the area. Target acquired, threat assessed, decision made, all while maintaining defensive posture with both hands free. Try that one-handed while holding a flashlight and a knife simultaneously. You're task saturated and vulnerable. And here's the thing about red light mode that nobody tells you. It preserves your night vision while providing adequate illumination for camp tasks. You can maintain perimeter awareness while cooking, reading, or performing maintenance. White light destroys your natural night adaptation and makes you blind to threats outside your illumination cone. Red light keeps you functional in both contexts. Your combat knife can't prevent the fall that breaks your leg. The headlamp can. Your combat knife can't help you identify safe water sources. The headlamp can. Your combat knife can't let you navigate hostile terrain at night. The headlamp can. Survival is about avoiding the need for your weapon, not optimizing it. Number 5, and this is where the comments section becomes a war zone. Trekking poles. 2 collapsible aluminum poles with carbide tips and wrist straps. You're thinking I've completely abandoned any pretense of tactical thinking. You're thinking these are for elderly hikers and casual trail walkers. You're thinking there's no possible way these outperform a combat knife. You're wrong on all counts, and I can prove it. Let's be real for a minute about mobility in an apocalypse. Your ability to cover ground efficiently while maintaining energy reserves determines your survival options more than your ability to fight. You can't fight your way out of a surrounded position. You can't knife your way through a city-sized horde. You can run or you can't. Trekking poles increase your sustainable travel speed by approximately 15% on rough terrain while reducing joint impact by up to 30%. That's measured, proven data. You can cover more ground for longer periods while arriving at your destination in better condition to handle threats. But you're still thinking about zombies, so let's address it directly. Trekking poles are reach weapons with 6-foot effective range. Your combat knife needs you inside grappling distance to be effective. The poles keep threats at a distance, where they can't hurt you while you can hurt them. A carbide tip driven into an eye socket with your body weight behind it? That's stopping power. 2 poles working in coordination? That's area denial. Here's what most people don't realize about fighting multiple opponents. You don't win by being deadlier. You win by controlling space and making it impossible for them to bring superior numbers to bear. 2 poles create a moving barrier that forces zombies to approach individually, even when there's 5 of them. Your knife lets them all reach you simultaneously. The poles create a choke point you control. And let's talk about the thing nobody mentions. You can release a trekking pole instantly without losing it. Wrist strap catches it, your hand is free for a different task, the weapon is still available when you need it again. Your knife? It's in your hand or it's sheathed. There's no intermediate state. You can't rapidly transition between tasks without either dropping your weapon or maintaining a grip that limits your other hand's functionality. You need to climb a fence. Poles collapse and attach to your pack in 3 seconds. Knife stays in sheath and provides 0 assistance. You need to cross unstable terrain. Poles provide balance and weight distribution. Knife provides nothing. You need to probe uncertain ground for structural integrity. Poles extend your sensory range. Knife requires you to physically test every surface. Here's the assessment nobody wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. Your combat knife is a psychological comfort item masquerading as a survival tool. It makes you feel capable and prepared. It signals to others that you're someone who's thought about violence. It looks cool on your belt and in your social media posts about preparedness. And when the actual apocalypse happens, it will serve you adequately in a narrow range of circumstances, while failing you in the vast majority of situations that determine survival. The camping gear I just described, that's boring. That's methodical. That's not going to get featured in tactical magazines or zombie movies. A hatchet processing firewood isn't cinematic. A folding saw-building shelter doesn't generate excitement. A multi-tool repairing equipment is tedious. A headlamp preventing falls is mundane. Trekking poles extending travel range is unsexy. But here's the thing that separates fantasy from function. You're not filming a movie. You're trying not to die. Your combat knife optimizes for the dramatic moment. The camping gear optimizes for the 10,000 undramatic moments that actually comprise survival. And when the dramatic moment does arrive, when violence becomes unavoidable, you'll discover something important. A hatchet to the skull is just as final as a knife to the brain, except you've got reach, power, and forgiveness of error on your side. Let me give you a scenario that ties this together. You're in week 4. You found a defensible position in a rural area, but you need to improve it before winter. You've got your combat knife or you've got the camping setup I described. Let's see how this plays out. Knife scenario. You spend 6 hours processing enough firewood for one night, dulling your blade and exhausting yourself. Your shelter has gaps you can't adequately seal. Your water procurement requires boiling over a fire you struggle to maintain. You have no perimeter alarm system. When a zombie stumbles into your area at 2 a.m., you're awakened by impact on your door. You fumble for your knife in darkness. You're disoriented and reactive. Camping gear scenario. You spend 2 hours processing 3 nights' worth of firewood with the hatchet and saw, working efficiently and quietly. Your shelter is properly sealed with precise cuts and solid bracing. Your water system is maintained with the multi-tool. You have a perimeter alarm made from scavenged materials and wire. When that same zombie approaches at 2 a.m., your alarm wakes you with advance warning. Your headlamp instantly assesses the threat. Your trekking poles keep it at distance while you decide whether to engage or let it pass. Which scenario has you surviving to week 8? Which one has you maintaining physical and mental health? Which one has you positioned to handle the next crisis and the one after that? Sounds reasonable until you realize that every survival expert who's actually lived through extended wilderness situations carries camping gear, not combat knives. Every military survival course emphasizes multifunction tools over specialized weapons. Every long-term preparedness plan prioritizes problem-solving capability over combat effectiveness. The fix is simple. Stop optimizing for Hollywood and start optimizing for reality. Your combat knife isn't wrong, it's just incomplete. It's a specialist tool in a generalist environment. The camping gear is generalist equipment that remains effective when violence becomes necessary. You don't need to choose between capability and practicality. You need to understand that practicality is capability in 95% of situations. Here's my brutal assessment. If you're carrying only a combat knife into an apocalypse, your survival rating is maybe 4 out of 10 short-term, 2 out of 10 long-term. You'll make it through the initial chaos on adrenaline and luck. You'll start failing when the mundane requirements of survival overwhelm your specialized tool. If you're carrying the camping setup I described, your rating jumps to 7 out of 10 short-term, 6 out of 10 long-term. You have genuine multi-purpose capability that addresses the actual challenges you'll face. The practical advice is boring. Prioritize tools that serve multiple functions and excel at violence secondarily rather than primarily. A hatchet processes wood and splits skulls. A saw builds shelter and intimidates threats. A multi-tool solves problems and becomes a weapon when necessary. A headlamp prevents accidents and provides tactical advantage. Trekking poles extend range and create defensive barriers. Your combat knife does one thing very well and everything else poorly. All right, your turn. Look at your current apocalypse loadout honestly. How much of it is optimized for combat versus problem solving? If you had to choose between your tactical knife and a camp hatchet with 50 feet of paracord, which one actually keeps you alive longer? If violence is 8% of survival and problem solving is 92%, why is your gear selection inverted? Would you have caught yourself making these mistakes before it was too late? That's what this channel is for. We're not here to feed your zombie movie fantasies. We're here to replace them with strategies that actually work. Hit subscribe, smash the bell, and tell me in the comments which camping item you're adding to your kit and which tactical fantasy you're finally abandoning. Because when the dead walk, your survival won't be determined by how deadly you look. It'll be determined by how many problems you can solve before violence becomes your only option. And the camping gear? That's problem-solving equipment that happens to excel at violence when there's no other choice.